Good evening. Thank you all for being here at our second Advent, this Advent season, Advent presentation. I want to thank our youth director, Antonio Guzman, for working the information, getting this set up for our presenter tonight, and also for Jenny Butch, our Director of Evangelization and Discipleship, for working with us as well. Let's begin with a prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Father, we thank you for coming to us in love and with love. We enter into the Advent season of awaiting with excitement as your Son comes to us this Christmas. Bless our time tonight to learn more about Jesus' mother and the many ways she brings us to her Son. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. In the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Father Obi Zumas is pastor of Marietta in southeastern part of Oklahoma. And they have a large Hispanic community. Father Obi's from Africa. We sent him to Mexico to learn Spanish, which he did, and he's came back. He's been a wonderful pastor, a wonderful shepherd for those folks down there. And what I understand is that Christ the King made a donation to help them build their new church, which they badly needed for their growing community. And so I asked Luis Soto, who is the assistant to the Secretariat of the Archdiocese of Oklahoma City, I said, would you come and talk to us about Our Lady Guadalupe, and would you also bring us a picture? Because we need one, and we don't have one. And he said he would, and he talked to Father Obi and shared our desire to have an image of Our Lady Guadalupe. Obi said, in gratitude for the contribution of Christ the King, I want to give them this exact copy of Our Lady Guadalupe. So a big thanks to Father Obi for that generous acknowledgement of Christ the King's support for their parish and ministry Hispanic community in Medill. So I'll let Luis share a little bit more about that story, and I'm very happy that you're here. I'm excited myself to hear Luis speak again on this patroness of the Americas. Luis, welcome to Christ the King.
Thank you, Father, and thank you all for being here. I have two microphones in case I move. I'm Luis Soto. I was born and raised in a small town in northwest Mexico. It was an Irish town in Mexico. And it's real. The founders of this town, the last name was O'Brien. And they changed the name to make it sound Spanish, and they make it Obregón. And it's called Obregón in the northwest of Mexico. And before coming to Oklahoma City, I had been in Oklahoma City for only a year. But before that, I served in the Archdiocese of Denver for many years. So I was born and raised in Mexico. I started learning English when I was 28. So that's why my accent. So if there's something you don't understand, just raise your hand and I will say it again, no problem. But I'm very happy to speak about Our Lady of Guadalupe. You know, when you are born and raised in a country like Mexico, there is an image you see everywhere. In every single car, every single bus, every single restaurant, every single business, every single home. And that's the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe. In some sense, Our Lady of Guadalupe created the Mexican people. In some sense, Our Lady of Guadalupe is the source of the identity of the Mexican people. But Our Lady of Guadalupe goes beyond the borders of Mexico and was declared the Queen for the Americas by Pope John Paul II, St. John Paul II. And I was 9 years old when I went to the Basilica for the first time. It was quite a trip from my hometown, about 30 hours in a bus, 2 hours in a plane. And my mother took me there. And I remember being really surprised or amazed, not only by the place, but by the faith of the people there. And even though I grew up with a devotion to Our Lady of Guadalupe, and we had several images of Our Lady of Guadalupe in my house, being there was something very special. I have been there, I don't know how many times. I lived in Mexico City for a few years, but it's a very special place. I don't know if you know this, but this is the most visited Catholic site in the entire world. I'm sorry for St. Peter's Basilica, but about 20 million people visit this place every year. Well, that was before COVID, right? I don't know now. And between 8 and 10 million people will visit the shrine between today and the feast day. Because today is the feast of Saint Juan Diego, and I will tell you why in a minute. But it's a special place. John Paul II, a Polish priest, said something like this: "The appearance of Mary to the native Juan Diego on the hill of Tepeyac in 1531 had a decisive effect on evangelization. Its influence greatly overflows the boundaries of Mexico, spreading to the whole continent, and I'm amazed to see and proud to see how here in the United States, many and many and many more every year are devoted to Our Lady of Guadalupe. Many have recognized in the mestiza face of the Virgin of Tepeyac. Do you know what the word mestiza means? Mestiza means mixed of colors, because she's not brown skin and she's not white. She's a mix of both. She's a mestiza face. In Blessed Mary of Guadalupe, an impressive example of a perfectly enculturated evangelization. When we say enculturated, it means that she used the symbols, images, language, meanings of the people that she was talking to tell them the truth about Jesus Christ and the gospel. So she used the symbols of the culture to speak about her son. That's the concept of enculturated. I don't know if you know this, but John Paul II was elected a pope in October 16, 1978. His predecessor, John Paul I, had agreed to come to Mexico for a meeting of Latin American bishops happening in Puebla, Mexico, which is a town about an hour southeast of Mexico City. So John Paul I accepted to come in January of 1979 to this meeting. John Paul II gets elected a pope in October, like 3 months before, and one of the first decisions he made was said, I will go to that trip as a pope. And the first trip he made was the trip to Mexico, to the shrine of Our Lady of Guadalupe. And he fell in love. He said later this: to some degree, this pilgrimage inspired and shaped all of the succeeding years of my pontificate. He came back to Mexico 5 times, was the most visited country. It was not because of beautiful Mexico or anything like that. It's because the Mother of the Lord and Our Lady of Guadalupe, and the significance and the importance that she saw in the apparition of Our Lady of Guadalupe for the evangelization of the continent. And he will always remember and remind us of that every single time. A friend of mine, Monsignor Eduardo Chavez, he was in charge of the cause for the canonization of Juan Diego. When there is a cause for a canonization, like we have a cause for the canonization of Stanley Rother here, there is somebody in charge of that, of doing all of the studies and doing the process with the Vatican so that person gets approved to become a saint, right? So he was in charge. He's a historian from Mexico. He's the man who knows the most about Our Lady of Guadalupe. Nobody else in the whole world knows more about that than Monsignor Chavez. So he tells this story, that he was in the Vatican when the Pope approved the canonization of Juan Diego in 2002. The Pope was already very weak. He was very, very sick. His doctors were telling him not to travel anymore, to stay there. So there is a meeting with all these cardinals and his doctors and everyone else, and they are deciding where the canonization is going to happen. And everybody's saying, well, you do the canonization here in St. Peter's, and you don't need to travel. You are very weak. It's traveling all over the Atlantic. You don't have to do that. And Monsignor Chavez said that Pope John Paul was leaning down like he was when he was very old, listening to everyone. Then he looked at them and said, did you finish? And then Monsignor Chavez says that he opened his blue eyes, looked at them all and said, I don't know if you are going, but I am. And he came back to Mexico City, was one of his last trips as a pope to canonize Juan Diego, who is the Indian to whom Our Lady of Guadalupe appeared. So let me start this story. In order to understand the full meaning of Our Lady of Guadalupe and the history and the story that she's telling us for the evangelization and for all of us, you have to understand the people she was speaking to. Like in the Bible, if you want to understand the Bible, you have to understand the history, the customs, and the situations of the people in the Old Testament or the New Testament in order to understand the true meaning of the passage that you are reading in the Bible. Well, something similar would happen here. You have heard about the Aztecs. The Aztecs actually was a combination of 3 tribes. And one of them, and the most important of them, was called the Meshikas. The Meshikas, that's where the name Mexico is coming from. Anybody from Mexico here? Nobody. Well, the word Mexico actually means in the navel of the moon, in the belly button of the moon, in the center of the moon. And they believed that they were to be building a city. They heard from their gods they were supposed to build a city in a very unique place. They were coming from the north, says the sources, not from the US, I guess, but from the north of Mexico City, looking for a very special sign. One thing that when they found this, they knew the city had to be built at that location. The sign was very, very easy to find. Was an eagle killing a snake on top of a cactus. And they were looking for that sign. And they were walking south, looking for a place where that would happen. Well, the story said that when they came to what today is Mexico City, it was a huge lake. It was a huge lake. And in the center of the lake, there was a little island. I think the word is an islet, right? A little island in the lake. And they saw in that place this image, or this scene. And they asked permission to the people in there if they could go and live in that little islet. They said, well, it's full of snakes. Who wants to live there? Go and take it. And they started building the city from that place. Actually, the seal of Mexico is this image. It's in every coin, in every single bill, and it's in the center of the flag of Mexico. It's an eagle killing a snake on top of a cactus. So those were the Aztecs. They built a great city. They called it, I'm sorry, I'm going to be using some words that are not even in Spanish, but you don't have to pronounce these words. Just let me say them, just because I like to say them. But they built this city, and they named it Tenochtitlan. When the Aztecs arrived, this is what they saw. This is the image they saw. And there are many writings of the Spaniards, the Spanish conquerors writing back to Spain saying what a beautiful sight, what a beautiful place they encountered. It was the most powerful empire in the entire continent when they arrived. And they had some very specific beliefs. They believed the world had been created by the gods when they met in a place called Teotihuacan. Have you ever been there? Nobody has been in Mexico City. Teotihuacan is a place with the pyramids and all of that. They believe the gods met in that place to create the world. And in order to create it, they needed to have the sun burning, which was the most important of all these stars they knew, and the sun was about to extinguish. And one of the gods, Quetzalcoatl, decided to sacrifice himself for the creation of the world. So he threw himself into the sun, and the sun started in fire again, and they had the sun every single day. So they believed that in order to have the sun coming out every single day in the morning, they needed to offer human sacrifices. And they did many human sacrifices because of that. When the Spaniards arrived, that's the first thing they stopped. They said, this is abomination, and they stopped everything. The Spaniards, the Aztecs, I want to imagine they were in the worst depression. Can you imagine? They were worshiping a god for years, sacrificing human people every single day for the sun to come out every single day, and then suddenly they stop the sacrifices, and guess what? The sun is coming out every single day. They were betrayed by their gods. They were in full depression. However, they were a very intellectual group as well. They created a masterpiece of calendar, and they believed history was going through some cycles. Each one of those cycles, they call them a sun, S-U-N. A new sun will come out. A new sun will come out. And every change of sun will be a new era, a new world, a new beginning. And they believed they were, at that time, when the Spaniards arrived, they were living the fourth sun. But they were waiting the imminent arrival of the fifth and definitive sun. The fifth and definitive sun was about to come in a year that in their calendar is called 13 Caña, which means the year of the wisdom of God. And that year was 1531. So they were waiting something to happen in 1531. Something great was going to happen that was going to change everything they believed in. Before 1531, not many had converted to the faith. Things were not going that easy. It was complicated. To put it in a historical sequence, in 1519, the Spaniards arrived. Only 2 years after that, they were able to conquer the most powerful empire in the entire continent. There is a long history about that I'm going to go into. I'm not going to go into, but they conquered Mexico City in 1521. In 1524, the first missionaries arrived. 4. They didn't speak the language. They were into a new world. 2 of them died within a year. It was a new world. And then in 1526, the Spanish crown said, let's do a Vision 2030 and let's send all the evangelizers here. And they sent 12. And the evangelization kind of started there. A priest, a Capuchin, a Franciscan priest, Fray Juan de Zumárraga, was named the protector of the Indians in 1527 because there were many abuses against the Indian people living there because most of the conquerors were trying to get some gold and become rich and all of that. They were Christian and they were Catholic and they wanted to do good, but I think the hunger for gold was stronger many times. And he starts getting in conflict with his own Spaniard or Spanish brothers. At some point that they tried to kill the bishop in 1529. The same Spaniards tried to kill the bishop because he was getting in the middle of the business they were trying to do in there. In 1529, his letters were being confiscated, and he wrote a letter in secret to the Spanish crown and to the Vatican that is in the archives of the Basilica. And he will say, if God himself does not intervene, this land will be lost. And he wrote that in 1529. On the other hand, Juan Diego was an Indian who was born in 1474. He was 50-some years old when this happened. His name in Nahuatl, Nahuatl is the language of the Aztecs. You don't have to say that word. Is Cuautlatlahuatzin. I cannot even say it myself. And it means the eagle that speaks. He was one of the few baptized into the faith with his wife. His wife died, and he was living with his uncle. Juan Bernardino was the name of his uncle, also converted to the faith. And he will come to Mexico City for catechesis every day. He lived about 15 miles away from Mexico City. So this was built in a way that they had, do I have a microphone here? No? Can you hear me? Yeah. They had kind of bridges connecting with the mainland from the islet here. So I know this is down below, but this is the north down here. And up here, there's a little hill called Tepeyac. And in order for him to come to the downtown of Mexico City, he needed to go through Tepeyac on a Saturday to go to catechesis to downtown Mexico City where the priest lived. So in the morning, on Saturday, December 9th of 1531, he was walking. And when he was on the top of the hill, he heard some singing, beautiful music. The document I have there on the right is the first writing of the apparitions. The Aztec language was not a written language, was a spoken language. And the Spaniards and others developed the writing format of the Nahuatl language, and it is in that language that this was recounted in a document that in Nahuatl is called the Nican Mopogua, which it means here is told, making emphasis in the fact that there was an oral story of this. People was talking about this story, and the author, decided to put it in writing using the language of the Aztecs. He's on the top of the hill, and he starts listening some beautiful singing. If you are of an Aztec, here's where you have to understand the context. For them, the two most beautiful things in nature, the only things that were divine and were able to get us in communication with the divine, were flowers and poetry or music, singing. I don't know if you ever go to a Spanish Mass and you get the book is going to be called Flor y Canto, flower and songs, because of this. Because for them, flowers and singing were divine in nature. So he's walking there and he listens to beautiful music. I think all of you remember how the story is going to end. It's going to end with flowers, remember? It started with music and ends with flowers. So he's up in the top of the hill and he hears some beautiful music and he starts asking himself, by any chance am I worthy? Have I deserved what I hear? Perhaps am I only dreaming it? Where am I? Is it possible that I am in the land of the flowers, in the land of the corn, perhaps in the land of heaven? He doesn't know what he was going through. He then saw a beautiful lady that spoke to him in Nahuatl, in his language. However, she, our lady, referred to him using his Spanish name, not the Cuautlatlahuatzin name, but the Spanish name, but adding the Nahuatl ending to the name. If you ever know a Hispanic person, they will offer you something small every single time. They'll say, do you want a cafecito, a little coffee, with a galletita, with a little cookie, una comidita, a little meal? Everything is little, little, little. And that's a way of showing respect and kindness. And it's not that, actually, some people will refer to God as Diosito. I know it doesn't make any sense to you, but believe me, it does. Diosito is a very tender and loving way of referring to God. Dad will be papi, papito. It's a diminutive way of speaking. Well, the Aztec version of that is the sin ending. So Our Lady will talk to Juan Diego saying, Juan Sin, Juan de Sin. In Spanish will be Juanito, Juan Dieguito. Using his baptismal name, a Spanish name, but using the diminutive to talk to him. And then she says, I am the ever perfect Holy Mary. This was 1531. 1531. The dogma of the Immaculate Conception of Mary had not been proclaimed yet. She declared herself to be immaculate by saying, I am the ever perfect Holy Mary. This could not be invented by somebody in 1531. Who has the honor to be the mother of the true God for whom we live. That title of God is an Aztec title for God, the God for whom we live. The creator of people, the Lord of the near and far, the Lord of heaven and earth. She uses a mix of Aztec names for God, or images, and Spanish images of God, saying, I am the mother of that you refer to as God, and you are learning is the true God for whom we live. I am that. And then she says, I want a temple to be built in this place. That's what she basically asked. You will say, well, what's the big deal with having a temple built in that place? Well, the bishop was going through a lot, as I told you. And in the Aztec mentality, if you want to build a new city, the first thing you build is the temple. Not like we do right now. I mean, we build neighborhoods and the last thing we think of is the temple, right? In their mentality, building a temple meaning starting a new civilization, starting a new city, starting something new. And she says, I want very much that they build my sacred little house here, in which I will show him, I will exalt him upon making him manifest. I will give him to all people in all my personal love, because truly I am your compassionate mother, yours and of all people that live together in this land, and also of all the various lineages of men, those who love me, those who cry to me, those who seek me, those who trust in me. So she wants a temple to be built. Juan Diego goes to see the bishop, gets an appointment with a trouble Bishop Juan de Zumárraga, and he says, you know, I was coming through Tepeyac and I saw a lady and she wants a temple to be built. And the bishop said, yeah, let's do it. No, he said, well, why don't you come back another day? You know, I'm very busy right now. I got many things to do. You can come back on another day. So he went back, Our Lady, and told Our Lady that the bishop didn't listen. And he showed to Our Lady what I call the Juan Diego syndrome, with all respect to Juan Diego, of course. It's just something I made up. And it's a syndrome that I can say, only a Mexican can say what I'm about to say, okay? That we, many Mexicans, have that syndrome in the church, and many Hispanics have that syndrome, but I think many Catholics in general share the Juan Diego syndrome. Juan Diego came to Our Lady and said, you know, lady, I went to see the bishop, but I don't think he believed me. So the syndrome is that he said, why don't you send someone else? Why don't you find someone else? Because I am nobody. I have no education. I am a leaf. I am a ladder. I am a rope. Those are the words that he used. I don't go to those places, he said. And Our Lady gave him the vaccine against the syndrome. She said, listen, my youngest son, know for sure that I have no lack of servants. Of course, I always said, why didn't she appear to the bishop himself? Everything was going to be easier and faster. Just come and say, you know, Bishop, I'm the mother of God, build a temple. Done. And then she said, I have messengers to whom I can give the task of carrying my breath, my word, so that they can carry out my will. And then she starts speaking like a mom. And I beg you, my youngest son, and I strictly order you, you go again tomorrow. So this was the second apparition, Saturday at the end of the day. Right? On Sunday morning, he came back. He went directly to speak to the bishop, told him, and the bishop asked him for an evidence, for a sign. This is not new. In the entire Bible, every time God is giving a mission to somebody, the answer of the person is, how can I know this? And there is a sign. Even with Our Lady, when the angel said, you will be the mother of Jesus, she says, and the sign is your cousin is pregnant, right? There's always a sign accompanying every single mission. So the bishop said, I want to see a sign that what you are telling me is true. So he went back Sunday afternoon, saw Our Lady again on the top of the hill, and said, the bishop wants a sign. And Our Lady said, okay, come back tomorrow for the sign, tomorrow morning. When Juan Diego got home that night, his uncle, Juan Bernardino, was sick. So he didn't come back on the 11th, on Monday. Late at night on the 11th, his uncle said, go and get a priest because I'm going to die. So very early on December 12th, he left his house to go to Tlatelolco, downtown Mexico City, to get a priest to come and see his uncle. The story says that when he was going, he said, oh my God, the lady, if I go through the top of the hill, she's going to ask me for the sign and all of that, and I have no time right now. My uncle is very sick. So he went around the hill. If you ever go to Mexico City and you ever go to the Tepeyac, I want to organize a pilgrimage, by the way. I'll do it one of these years. But if you go there, on the right side of the hill, there is a little chapel. That was the first chapel built because that's the side when she appeared to him when he was going around the hill. The story said, Our Lady came down from the top of the hill and blocked his way, like God does to us many times. We are trying to go around, and he will come and, where are you going, my son? What are you trying to do? She comes down to him, and he tells him what's happening. And then Our Lady says the most beautiful words that we hear in the Holy Story from Our Lady to all of us, saying, listen, my youngest son, that what afflicted you is nothing. Do not let it disturb your face, your heart. This face and heart, in the Aztec mentality, in our mentality, a human person is made of body and soul, right? Or body and spirit. In the understanding of the Aztecs, it was face and heart. The face meaning the body, and the heart meaning the soul, okay? So do not let it disturb your face, your heart. Do not fear. Am I not here? I who have the honor to be your mother. Are you not in my shadow and under my protection? Am I not the source of your joy? Are you not in the hollow of my mantle, in the crossing of my arms? Do you need something more? And she told him, go and see the bishop. I'll take care of your uncle. And the sign you are going to bring to him is that in the top of the hills, you will find some roses. Put them in your tilma. Now I'll be speaking about the tilma in a minute. And bring them back to me. Juan Diego brought the tilma to Our Lady. The story said she rearranged the flowers. Like if something needed to be rearranged at that time there. Things were not going well. She needed to rearrange everything there. And when Juan Diego went to see the bishop, he uncovered his tilma to show the proof, and the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe was imprinted the way we see it today. When we speak about the apparition of Our Lady of Holy Mary in Our Lady of Guadalupe, is the first ever apparition of Our Lady ever in the world. It's the only one for which we have a sign or something left behind. So let me speak about the tilma and the image. The Aztecs used to wear something around their necks. It was long, and it was called a tilma. It was a cloak made of cactus fiber, the same cactus used for tequila. There is no correlation there, but it's the same. And it's not only a piece of clothing. It's used for protection, because they would put it around their bodies when it was cold. It's used for marriage, because they will tie the bride and the groom with a tilma. Have you ever been in a Mexican wedding? There's a ceremony like that. They have a huge rosary. It's called the lasso. And both the bride and the groom get tied with the lasso. That's coming from the tilma. So the tilma also has the symbolism of a covenant of marriage. The tilma represents your dignity in society, because depending on your rank in the society was what kind of tilma you were wearing. If you had colors in your tilma, you were from a higher rank in society. Juan Diego's tilma was completely white. And she beautified the tilma and put the colors in his tilma, like lifting him up. The Lord had said from the mouth of our mother in the Gospel of Luke, He will lift up the lowly. And he did it with Juan Diego, imprinting her own image in his tilma. A tilma that was not very good quality. If you see the image up close, there is a line going through here. And that line is because Juan Diego's tilma was made of two pieces. Was not a single piece. He was a poor man. He didn't have for a tilma to be made of one piece only. Monsignor Chavez, that I'm quoting him, he also says, he told me one day crying, he said, Luis, you know what? I celebrate the Mass, and I preside over the Mass, and I wear the most beautiful castles, with the most beautiful colors in them. But Our Lady beautified and imprinted her own image in the tilma of a lay person like you. I think this is the great sign of the new evangelization started by Our Lady, saying, Juan Diego, your tilma is made of two pieces, your tilma is white, but I'll put the colors in there, and I'll put my own image in there. The tilma was put on the newborn as a sign of consecration too. The tilma was also used to carry the crops. So the tilma was really a very useful piece of clothing that they had. It was an essential part of their life. And there is where Our Lady imprinted her image, in the image that we see today in the Basilica of Our Lady of Guadalupe. You should know that no other piece of clothing or cloak like this should have lasted more than 100 years, I don't know. It was exposed for more than 100 years without protection. People was touching it, getting some pieces out of it. The painting has no strokes at all. A very well-known Secretary of State of the United States, a female, I'm not going to say the name, she went to visit Mexico City, and somebody had the good idea of taking this lady, Secretary of State, to visit the Basilica of Our Lady of Guadalupe. She came in, saw it, and she said, oh my God, she's beautiful. Who painted it? And the rector of the Basilica responded, God did. And she couldn't believe the answer. But that's something that happens. Not only that, the colors penetrate the fiber. If you see the image from the back, you see the colors on the other side. Not the same image, but the colors on the other side. The temperature of the tilma, when they do studies, is 36.5 degrees all the time. like a human body. In 1921, a crazy man tried to destroy the tilma, and he put a bomb in front. He put it inside some flowers, put it in front of the altar. The bomb exploded, and this was the crucifix on the altar, but the tilma suffered no damage at all, and the explosion was heard miles away from where it happened. The tilma also has the representation of the lady of the book of Revelation. The book of Revelation in chapter 12 says, "A great sign appeared in the sky, a woman clothed with the sun, with a moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. She was with child and wailed aloud in pain, and she labored to give birth." Remember, they were waiting for the fifth son. So she came dressed with the sun. Remember, this happened in Mexico, which means in the center of the moon. She's standing in the center of the moon. Not only that, there had been done many studies on this tilma. In one of the studies, they took all of the position of the stars, and if they will take the mantle and display it, the arrangement of the stars is the arrangement of the stars in the skies of Mexico City on December 12, 1531 at 6:45 a.m. Exactly. She is with a face like leaning to a side. Her hair is this type of I don't know, say like whatever is that called, you know what I'm talking about. And that is a sign that she's a virgin in the Aztec mentality. She's looking down. When you ever talk to an indigenous person in Mexico and she wants to listen to you, she will do this, like giving you the ear. Talk to me. I'm listening to you. I'm humble next to you. And that's the position she's having. Not only that, the inclination of her face is 23.5 degrees. The exact inclination of the axe of the earth in 1531. Her hands are together in prayer, in a sign of prayer that is not Aztec. It's an Spanish way of praying. It's a European way of praying. And that's the way she's praying. If you see the original painting, the colors of her hands are different. One is brown and one is white. And she's putting them together in prayer, like bringing together the entire people there. She has the sun, the sky. By the way, in Spanish and in Nahuatl, the word sky and the word heaven is the same word, cielo. We don't have two words for that. It's only one. So she's wearing the heaven with her. She has the sun, heaven, and earth in the center. In all of her dress, there are images of flowers, because those are images of flowers for the Aztecs. And those flowers that are all over her mantle, that shape, like a triangle, is a flower that grows on a hill. So she was saying, a flower growth, I think this is easier here. A flower growth in a hill, and the root of this flower is in heaven. It's in the sky. It's coming from heaven. She's pregnant. Even though she's a virgin, she's pregnant because that ribbon she has here is a sign of pregnancy. At the bottom of her feet, there is an angel. But it's not a European angel. The European angels normally are babies or small children. This is an old man. In the Aztec understanding, the wisdom comes from the elderly. So that idea of baby angels for them was hard to grasp. So in the image, there is an older man and has two hands. One hand is grabbing heaven, and the other one is grabbing earth, like bringing together heaven and earth. She's standing in the center of the moon. When you ever go to Mexico City, these type of moons are always seen like this, not sideways, always like this. I don't know what's that, but it is. There are many flowers in her mantle, but in the very center, in her womb, there is a flower, I don't know if you can see it here, that has 4 petals. And all the Aztec images, the symbology for the source of life and God is a flower with 4 petals. So in the very center of her womb, she has this flower, and that's the only place in the entire tilma where you see this flower that has the 4 petals right there. So she really was a code and a beautiful message. And I'm going to say one last thing. In the 1920s, somebody discovered in the eyes of the image some sort of stains. More than 40 different scientists, most of them from the United States, have done studies on the eyes of Our Lady of Guadalupe. Initially, they saw stains. And when they magnify, ophthalmologists and all these people magnify those images, they see something like this, which seems to be what was happening at the time Juan Diego opened her tilma in front of the bishop in 1531. So, Our Lady of Guadalupe, John Paul II said that she was the star of the new evangelization. I think something that is new in the new evangelization is not the content, which is the same, but one of the things that is new with the new evangelization is that you and I, the laity, have a more active role in the new evangelization. Juan Diego came to Our Lady as a poor man with no education, with no training, saying, send somebody else, I'm not for that task. And Our Lady said, at the end of the conversation with him, she said something that for me has been significant my entire life in ministry. She said, you are my ambassador, most worthy of all trust. And sent him back to see the bishop. And I believe we Catholics are to be ambassadors, most worthy of Our Lady's trust, to carry her image, to carry the gospel that is imprinted in the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe and the message to everybody and to all the people that we go to. She's our Immaculate Mother, and she presents herself as Immaculate. And she came to Mexico in a time of crisis and difficulty to give us Him, she said, and inviting us to trust in Him. And I think our mission as Catholics is to see in Our Lady of Guadalupe the same invitation to go and see other people and tell them, this is what I believe in, and this is the tilma I'm carrying with me, and this is the covenant I have with me, and this is what I believe in, and this is the message that I want to share with you in a sense of a new evangelization. So, thank you. I don't know if there are any questions or comments, complaints. That's a great question. That's a great question. There are many theories about that. Fray Juan de Zumárraga, he was from a small town in Spain, in Extremadura in Spain. There is an image in his hometown that is called Guadalupe. Guadalupe, and means rivers of life. And actually has an Arab origin, that word. The story, most historians will say that Fray Juan de Zumárraga didn't speak Nahuatl, didn't speak the language of the Aztecs. And he had translators to speak to Juan Diego. Juan Diego came to him, and probably what happened is that Juan Diego said, I saw Coatl Asupe. Coatl is a snake, Asupe is the one that steps on the snake. So he said, I saw Coatl Asupe, the one that steps on the snake. And Fray Juan de Zumárraga related that to the Guadalupe that was the patroness of his hometown and decided to name this image Guadalupe as the image of his hometown. Now, other historians said the origin is different, but that's the one is the most common about the origin of this name, Guadalupe. Any other question? Everything was clear or nothing was clear? Yes. No, but Monsignor Chavez did something very interesting. He took the positions of the stars and he created like a musical box, you know, with the different positions. And the music coming out is very beautiful, let me tell you. It's the perfect, is the music coming out, it's as if he will put the positions of the stars in, I don't know how to call those in English, but in a piano with the different tones, and then rolling. So the number of the stars, I don't know if it has been counted how many they are, but the positions of the stars have been started to be the positions of the stars on the morning when she appeared to Juan Diego. Yeah, actually, when I was in Denver, we did a pilgrimage, 150 people, I think, with the Archbishop to the Basilica. I will never do 150 again. It's crazy. It was 4 buses, and there was a demonstration in downtown Mexico one day. It was crazy. But yeah, and that's something I think is very enriching. As I said, is the closest shrine that we have in that regards. And well, we have one here, but like the most visited shrine in the entire world. There is full of history, full of meaning, full of symbolism, full of faith, and it's a beautiful place to visit. Every time I go to Mexico City, I go to visit. I'm going to spend Christmas with my family, and in my flight back, I happen to spend the night in Mexico City, so I'll have time to go to Mass to the Basilica when I'm coming back from my hometown. So,
you know, the shrine to Stanley Rother, which we're building currently, took place in Guatemala. That's a little further south, but they're building a Tepeyac Hill also. So when you come out of the doors of the shrine, you look straight at the line of sight, a 40-foot hill, and it's Tepeyac Hill, and the statue of Our Lady of Guadalupe will be on top of that. So we've kind of combined Guatemala and Guadalupe together at the shrine. It'll be a beautiful place with a path that goes all the way up there.
And Guatemala and Mexico were the same country back then. It was not 2 different countries at that time.
Where do you want it to go? Yeah, it's a real treasure. In the rectory.
Yes, ma'am?
Mary?
Yeah. There is not documented pushback in that regards. However, there must be, because the devotion of Our Lady took time to really start. It was not like it was immediate after that happened. Most likely because of the pushback from the Spanish Senate. The way of government the Spanish crown created was like a Senate of Spaniards in charge of the New Spain. And that group was very much against the bishop. So I'm sure when the bishop came with the idea of building a shrine or a new site, the first chapel was not built by the bishop, was built by Juan Diego himself, and he went to live there in that little place. It wasn't until after a few years that he starts building that a temple in there, and that's the church that you see on the top of the hill today.
You have to wait till it becomes the bishop's idea. See.
You know, and something interesting there is that the vocation of the laity is also ecclesial. It's amazing how can I put it? She, in some sense, submitted herself to authority of the bishop. Like, kind of saying, go and asking for permission to do this. And I was like, why do you need permission from the bishop? You are the mother of God. You can just get it done and that's it. But she wanted us to work with the church, with your pastor, with your shepherd, whomever that is, to do what she's asking us to do. That's what I want to take out of that element that she asked Juan Diego, go and ask the permission of the bishop.